Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Nikki, your host for today, along with Janice Holland. We are really excited to have Janice join us. Janice is a highly respected licensed professional counselor, supervisor, a certified trauma model therapist, and an international trainer. Basically, she's seen it all, working in private practice, agencies, and mental health hospitals. That experience gives her such a unique perspective on healing. And Now, before we begin, we would also like you to know that she is also the creator of the Art of Healing Trauma Certification Program, and she's the host of the Trauma Teacher podcast. Now, before we begin, a quick important reminder for those of you aiming for ICFCC credits. Please keep your cameras on throughout the session. It's a requirement for certification. So let's get ready to learn from the best. Please join me in giving a big warm welcome to Janice Holland. Janice, over to you.
Hello, I'm so happy to meet you all, see you all. I love speaking and teaching and training, especially on trauma. This is something I'm really passionate about. And I love for when I speak and teach for it to be interactive in nature. So as I'm talking, if I say something or you have a question about or would like me to elaborate a little bit more, please send an emoji, raise your hand in the chat, somehow get my attention. I'm happy to stop and pause and answer questions because this is only as important and as effective as what you can get out of it and what you can take and what you can apply. I'm really passionate about my work being applicable, something that you can take back and use. And so with that, I'm going to see if I can share my screen without any drama. Let's see if I can do it. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So this is, I don't want to confuse you. So for tonight, we've titled it The Essentials of Trauma-Informed Care. I do have a PDF that you will get that is based on all the information that I have for you. And the title of the PDF is Trauma 101. The content is the same, but the titles are slightly different. So I did want to point that out before we go any further and introduce myself. So I am, like I said, I'm Janice Holland. I'm licensed through the state of Texas. That's my home where I'm from. I'm a LPC supervisor there, and I'm certified in the trauma model. And I currently live in Shanghai, China, and I oversee counseling interns here. I have a private practice here. I also speak and travel, and I go into the international schools quite often and help them establish themselves as being trauma informed. It's part of the DEIB work that a lot of the international schools are doing. So I'm actually heading to the Philippines tomorrow to work with some schools there. So I kind of am a little bit of a jack of all trades. I like doing all kinds of different things. I get bored fast. So that's a little bit about me, but we are here for you to learn about trauma. So let's move forward. I'm on a mission. What my goal is for you to feel really confident in the work that you're doing, and part of what helps us feel confident is when we know what our blind spots are, when we know where we can get tripped up, or we know how our own trauma stories and how our own trauma histories can interfere with the work that we're trying to do with the clients that we serve. And so that's very much a part of the perspective that I come forward with is most of us are getting into this work because we have our own story. We have our own pain points and we want to reduce the suffering of the world. And so that's part of what makes us really good and powerful at what we do, but it also can be a little bit of a stumbling block and a hindrance when we aren't clear on how our perspectives and our history with pain and with suffering can sometimes interact with the people that we're serving. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. So the three main objectives I'd like for you to walk away with is just understanding the impact of trauma, knowing what the obstacles in trauma recovery are for anybody in therapy or in coaching, and then implementing effective trauma recovery strategies. So I'll just say quickly, I am a therapist. I do train other therapists and supervise therapists, but I am so passionate about if you work with people, then you work with trauma. So I absolutely want to work with coaches, anybody who is in a position where they are working with other people, then it's really important and really powerful when you become trauma informed yourself. So I'm excited to be here working with you. I know that you guys are working coaching in all different kinds of capacities with the people that you serve. And I'm excited to work with you and teach you today. Okay, so with that, signs that someone is a trauma survivor. So if they are coming into session with you and they deny or kind of minimize their issues, often they'll say things like, well, yeah, this happened, but it wasn't that bad. And so many people have it so much worse. And they just kind of downplay the experiences that they've had. They don't want to make a big deal out of it. A lot of times they're struggling to connect with other people in meaningful ways. You hear a lot of self-blame and shame talk. They have a low, sense of self and the way they think that they're stupid or that they're not smart enough for this, or they'll say little things that indicate that they have a poor self-concept, and just kind of generally feel a little bit disconnected. So some people feel disconnected in that they are overworking and overachieving and very much in their mind and are not really grounded in their body and able to connect with people. And then others are kind of the opposite, where they are just so much in their feels and their emotions in their body, and they're unable to really come into their mind and articulate well what it is they need and what they want, and create some traction in the life and hold down a steady job, that kind of thing. So they're just a little disconnected in that way. Sometimes they feel, the people who are in their head, who are really anxious and overachievers, overworkers, tend to kind of be numb and not feel anything, or they'll be like hyper emotional. Big, if they do feel their big emotions, they're emoting a lot. And like I said, a lot when they're in those hyper emotional states, they're unable to really ground with their mind and stay connected, mind and body. All right, so even if somebody comes in for, you know, maybe they're wanting support and finding a job, or maybe they're wanting support in relationships, or they're coming in for some other here and now issue. If you're noticing these are some signs that there's some trauma in their history. If they're showing up and relating to you and describing themselves in ways like this, then there's signs that there's some trauma that's happened in their history. So with the trauma model, there are actually 5 foundational pillars, but we're going to look at 3 of the pillars today, that really help inform us. And what I love about the trauma model is it dives under any circumstances, any diagnosis that somebody might have, and looks at why the diagnosis was developed in the first place, why the circumstances are what they are. So we don't really deal with symptoms. We look at what caused symptoms to develop, because when we address our clients at that foundational level, then the symptoms tend to dissipate and take care of themselves. Of course, if somebody's coming in with really, really high levels of anxiety or depression, then we need to do some work with them to help them manage those symptoms. But the real work of helping somebody heal and develop the life that they want is going to come when we address the foundation of why they needed to self-protect and develop those symptoms. Okay, so hang on, looks like my slides skipped to the end. Don't know why. All right. So the first one we're going to look at is attachment to the perpetrator. So, as humans, we are mammals, and mammals have to have a group. They live in packs, right? If you look at all mammals in the wild, there is not a mammal that functions well on its own. They have to have at least one other person, and humans are the same way. So it becomes a real problem for us when we have when we have this need to attach, but we have caretakers who are not fully available. The word perpetrator is quite strong, and for some people it's applicable, right? But think of this more as It's also applicable, even though that word is a strong word, if your parents are, or maybe they're working a lot. They're not hurting you, they're not abusing you.
Excuse me,
Yes.
is the voice on?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, no.
Okay. How long has it been out?
From the last slide, yes.
I can hear you perfectly
No,
well.
we can hear you fine.
I
It's
could
on.
hear you throughout, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
I
Okay.
had no problems. Yes.
Yeah, properly.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. So hopefully we're all on the same page now. Okay, so if you, like I was saying that, we're humans, we're mammals, and we have to have attachments to survive, not just survive, but thrive and feel. And so we have to have those connections. And if you are in a home or in a family where your parents are not available for whatever reason, maybe they're working several jobs, you could be in a home where what's so, if the way your family looks on the outside is the most important thing, but on the inside, there's not a lot of love and nurture and connection. There's like an absence of feeling seen and nurtured and wanted and taken care of. And then obviously in the homes where there's direct emotional, verbal, physical abuse, this would apply too. Like, so what do we do when we are these little humans who have to have connection? We have to have that as a part of our mammalian instincts, but for whatever reason, and this isn't about blame, this is about understanding what happens to us biologically when we have to have attachment and connection and feel seen and heard and understood. And for whatever reason, that's not available to us, then it creates a real problem for us. It threatens our attachment systems. And so it develops this pattern of I have to figure out what I need to do to connect to people who are not available to me, right? And there's grief in that reality. There's grief that we are having to figure out how to still attach when we aren't really fully seen. And this is all happening unconsciously behind the scenes, and this grief is created. And so we have to kind of dissociate to tolerate that reality, right? We dissociate the parts of us who need love and comfort and connection, or we dissociate the parts of us that are receiving direct, verbal threats or physical threats. And so so it creates this duality within us. We have to attach to somebody who's also hurting us. They're either hurting us by not being available to just love and connect, or they're directly hurting us through the words or through the physical actions. And so there's grief that is very present with us, but we have to bury that grief so that we can attach and connect. All right, so that's kind of one pillar that creates that cognitive dissonance, that creates our inability to stay fully, wholly connected within ourselves. As many of you probably see, we continue to repeat those patterns moving forward, where we feel like love is dualistic in nature. People who love us also hurt us, and we tend to continue to repeat that reality until we identify this and it's solved. So another pillar of trauma is what we call the locus of control shift, and it kind of goes hand in hand with attachment to the perpetrator. So when your reality is, I have to dissociate or disconnect from myself to attach to my caretakers to feel love and connection, then I don't know what to do. Children don't know what to do with like somebody I love, and I'm an innocent child who deserves love and connection just because I'm a child. We don't know what to do with the fact that we can't receive that. So the only thing that makes sense to us is to determine that it's our fault. Because if it's my fault, then it makes sense, and I'm not helpless anymore. So if it's my fault that my mom isn't here to love me and hug me and tuck me in, or if it's my fault that my mom is saying bad things to me or hurting me physically, or my dad or whomever else, then it makes sense to me. I don't like it. It's still very painful, but it makes sense to me because I deserve it and it's my fault. So we've kind of flipped the script and determined that we're bad people, and we don't really know why fully. we can kind of guess why. And we believe that it's true about us, but not about anyone else. So this happens quite often when I'm working with clients. They'll say, well, I was just a bad apple. Well, I was just a really difficult kid. I was just really impossible to work with. And I'll just say why. And so they'll tell me some things that they did, but they aren't really able to fully articulate exactly why. And they don't believe it's true about anybody else. Like if I were to say, okay, well, if we go into the school and is there any kid in there who deserves to be yelled at, who deserves to be hurt, who deserves to sit at home alone all night, every night? Is there any kid in there who deserves that? They'll say, no, absolutely not. No, nobody would deserve that. Okay, but why do you deserve that? I don't know, but I just do. Like, it's just the way it is. You know, God doesn't love me, or they'll find some reason why, but it's not logical. It's just this locus of control shift that they've created in order to make sense of their reality. Right, so the combination of attachment to the perpetrator, attaching to somebody who is not fully available, and then flipping the script and making it my fault. Again, the reality is painful, but it makes sense to me. And so then like my nervous system can calm down a little bit and manage. I just now have to figure out how to be really good. So we have two choices at this point, and you see clients taking the track of perfectionism, working hard to please, working hard to be good, working hard to be acceptable, or screw it, I don't care, whatever, like doesn't matter, I'm a bad person. I don't, they'll just own that role and go all out in that role. So you kind of see people take these two different tracks. And what it takes for us when we are working with them is helping them identify the real truth is that they were an innocent child who deserved love and care and belonging just like everybody else. And it can be a little bit challenging to help somebody get to that, to accept that truth, because there's so much incredible grief that comes with that reality that they need to feel. And so then there's some work around supporting them and helping them feel that grief and process that grief, because it initially feels like a life or death situation, which makes sense if you think about it. They couldn't feel the grief as a child, because if they accepted the grief and felt it, they would detach from their caretakers, and that is a life or death situation before the age of 12. As adults, we're working with adults, it's not anymore, but they still have those feelings of a child that are very, very big. So just helping them kind of understand, like you're older now, you're more mature, you can hold and carry emotion. We have to kind of do some work to help them understand and realize that. It makes me think of when I had knee surgery, and I did the rest period of 6 weeks or whatever, and I went to the physical therapist, and I went limping into the physical therapist's office, and the physical therapist looked at me and like, what are you doing? March in place. And I was like, I can't. What are you talking about? I just had march in place. And then I started marching. My knee could totally bend and move. I just thought that I was still back at the old place, 6 weeks ago when I had surgery and I couldn't move it. I just needed someone to teach me and show me that my knee had developed and grown and it can move again. And it's very similar emotionally when we're working with people, helping them understand that they can hold and process emotion now that they didn't think they could before. Okay, so like I said, this is a way they blame themselves, and they're able to kind of calm and settle their nervous system and move forward by believing that they are wrong and that they're bad. Okay, so whenever we have these, I see something in the chat. Let me just. Oh, okay. Yeah, keep your cameras on if you want your credits. Okay, so grief avoidance strategies. If we struggle to accept that it's not our fault and that we didn't deserve what happened to us, that we were small and scared and trapped. And like I said, there's tremendous amount of grief that compounds inside. And so we develop a grief avoidance strategy. And every person that I know, including probably everyone in this room, because everybody I've met has some kind of strategy they use to not feel big feelings. Big feelings is not something most families know how to help children process and tolerate because they don't know how to process and tolerate themselves. So even if you haven't had big trauma, this still could be something that you kind of struggle with and how to process and feel big feelings. So it's really important to become aware that and for our trauma survivors that that it wasn't their fault what happened. They didn't deserve it. And so how did you develop, what skill did you develop to not have to feel those feelings? And I present this as, it's a good thing that you developed this strategy at the time. You were doing the best that you could to survive in a really impossible situation. So you're not a bad person for thank God you thought of something, a way to survive this. So people, continue to attach to others who reinforce that they're bad. They develop some kind of addiction. It could be a sexual addiction, a eating, a smoking, drinking, any kind of addiction. Self-blame is actually in this because if we blame ourselves, then we can avoid feeling our feelings. So you'll notice when you're talking to people, they'll really want to, well, I just, they'll say all kinds of things about the choices they made and what a bad person they are. And if they can stay in that narrative in their head, then they don't have to feel the feelings behind it. And then you have people who develop some forms of psychosis as well, DID, OCD, general anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, borderline personality disorder. And these are all symptoms of the root issue of not knowing how to feel grief and process grief and believing that they're bad and that they deserve bad things that are happening. So as you can see in the trauma model, all of these symptoms I'm listing here, the current medical model tends to teach us to treat all of these differently, but actually the root of them is the same, right? So if we dive under the different diagnosis and get to the root, then we can help people understand themselves and manage their symptoms in a much easier way. Because if we're just looking at the symptoms themselves and managing them, then it's not really going to heal or if they still believe they're a bad person, that's still going to find its way to show up as they move into their future. Okay. So the bottom line is we want our clients to feel their feelings and stay safe. And one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Colin Ross, who developed the trauma model, is, "Feeling your feelings won't kill you. It's your attempt to not feel them that will." So when we are trying our hardest not to feel our real true feelings through acting out, through addictions, through perfectionism, through anxiety, through whatever we're doing to not feel the core root raw feelings, those are the things that are going to kill us. It's not the feelings themselves, but we think it's the opposite, right? Until we start to do some of this work. Okay. So when we miss the fundamental signs of survivors, we unconsciously perpetuate their pain. So what I mean by that is when we miss these initial signs, when we miss that they have this underlying belief system that they deserve bad things, until we address all of those things, it's not that you're not helping them. Of course, we're helping them. Anybody who manages anxiety symptoms or manages whatever symptoms they're working with, it's supporting them. But we are also their pain is going to continue to manifest in their life until we get behind those symptoms and figure out why they developed and help them. So just take a moment and reflect on your clients and who is showing signs of attachment to the perpetrator, who's showing signs of the locus of control shift or really active in their grief avoidance strategy of choice. Just think about that. And then as you're considering that with your clients, like I said, many of us are trauma survivors as well. Like if you're walking the planet, you've been through some stuff, right? But those of us who become coaches, who become therapists, who become, who engage in helping professions, definitely tend to have a story like I said earlier, there's a reason why we engage in the work that we're doing. And so even for us, like to identify like, okay, do I have a locus, is there locus of control stuff going on with me? Do I feel like I need to prove that I'm good and I'm worthy by helping other people? Right? Am I trying to prove that I'm worth being here because I'm helping other people and that's proving my worth? That is the motivation behind that is putting a little too much pressure on your client's journey. And it can be causing you to avoid some grief that you need to process as well. Okay. So some assumptions we have about those who are coming in and we know they have a trauma history is that there's that disconnect. Like I said, there's that attachment to the perpetrator. They've had to separate themselves from knowing what just true, honest, pure, genuine love and connection is and what it feels like. When we go through that, our mind and body tend to separate and disconnect. And we struggle to feel multiple feelings at one time, right? We can't look at a situation and see all the angles of it. It's either we go into the really black and white thinking people are all good or all bad, or this situation is all good or all bad. I was working with a client this week and she's a young adult and really coming into realizing how manipulative her father has been. And as she was growing up, she was very close to her father and had a lot of judgment toward her mother. But now she's starting to understand that her father was really manipulating her behind the scenes. And she's experiencing a lot of grief and pain in that. But what she's wanting to be like, well, my dad's a bad person. I'm gonna, not have anything to do with my dad anymore. And I'm really challenging her to hold both truths, that her dad loves her and what are the ways that he's shown that he loves and cares about you, and this other reality that he was also manipulative and created some pain. And so an emotionally healthy person can hold both of those realities, but if you've experienced quite a bit of trauma, it's quite difficult to get to the place where you can accept and hold both of those truths. Okay, so why do we have a mind-body split? This is fascinating. I've explained it a little bit, but I'll also explain it through kind of the developmental process that we have as humans. So when we're young, most families of parents are able to help us develop physical integrity. For example, if you're, outside running around with your cousins or your friends and you fall down in the dirt and you skin your knee and you go inside and you're crying, your mom or your dad or whomever's there is going to pick you up, sit you on the sink, get soap on it and it hurts and oh, this is going to hurt. They're really helping you process the pain of your knee and we need to clean it and take care of it. But then they like patch it up and then they'll give you a big hug. Maybe they'll give you a cookie. Maybe they'll make you some tea or they'll do something to like give you comfort and help you calm down and soothe the physical pain. That's something that many, many parents are able to understand and help children. And so over time, the children can integrate that process so that by the time, like I have a 15-year-old son and he was playing basketball this weekend actually and fell on the court, sprained his ankle. He was in a lot of pain and he kind of was able to manage himself, like flag down the coach, get himself off the court. He's integrated his ability to take care of his physical pain because I've been able to model that for him over time, right? And many of us learn how to integrate and take care of ourselves physically because we've had somebody model that for us and teach us how to self-soothe and self-care when we have physical pain. Many caretakers don't know how to do that emotionally. So if you come home and you have big emotions, many caretakers just don't have the skill sets because their parents didn't teach them and their parents didn't teach them and their parents didn't teach them, right? And so what we will do is try to push emotional pain into our physical bodies to process it that way. So that's why some people start cutting, or they develop an eating disorder or have anxiety. They're trying to express physically because they know how to self-soothe a physical pain, because they've developed that slowly over time. They don't know how to soothe emotional pain and just sit and be in raw emotional pain and express it. So they will try to push it to their body. Does that make sense? So this is why we often, just understanding the background of why somebody might be engaging in cutting or having eating disorders or flashbacks, that kind of thing is just, I find it really helpful. And when you can explain it to your clients this way, it kind of normalizes the behavior, not normalizing in that it's acceptable, just like you're not crazy, you're not weird, like your brain is trying to find a way to process what's inside so it can come out and free you of this pain. It's trying to strategize, like, okay, what do I know to do with pain? How can I know what to do when there's a cut on my arm, so I'm going to make a cut on my arm so I know how to process pain that way. So that's why many people who cut talk about the relief because they know how to self-soothe in that way. Does that make sense? I find this concept, it's really interesting. Once I learned it, I was like, oh, wow, okay. Then it really helped me know how to work with my clients who are experiencing some of these symptoms. Okay, so like I said earlier, we have that mind-body split. When the emotions are big, we don't know how to process them. Sometimes we try to push them to our body and express them, or we go completely numb and go to our mind and start really thinking and analyzing, right? And just numb out in our body and overwork, overachieve, overaccomplish. So we get really active in our mind. So this chart kind of explains that. So you're either over here, stuck in your mind, not feeling enough. You're very numb. And if you do this for years, you're going to develop these symptoms because our bodies are not meant to be the container of these kinds of emotions, right? Or we go in our body and we act out and we have these big feelings. Our stress response turns on and off and we develop these symptoms. So most people are really comfortable in one place or the other. There are some who bounce back and forth between the two. And so you're either numb or you're in big emotion. I know for me, for years, until I did a lot of the healing work I needed to do, I was in my mind and numb all the time. But about maybe once a quarter, I would like snap and act out. I would get super drunk, smoke a pack of cigarettes. I would just like do all kinds of stuff, not really think it. My mind was not fully online. I would act out and emote, and then I would snap back over to, okay, I'm fine now. I'm back in that kind of numb place. And so when we're helping somebody heal and recover from trauma, we're pulling them into this healthy, balanced place where they can feel, because all the emotions within the circle, you can feel at the same time, or you can be present with, but all the feelings over in the right side, you can really only feel one at a time, right? They polarize. It pulls us into that really black and white place. So helping people feel their feelings, but also keep their mind online and be able to process with their mind, feel and process at the same time, right? And that's how we help them kind of get through the grief that they need to work through. And then they can live their life kind of in this balanced present place. And of course, if something major happens, they're going to feel big emotions, but then they have the self-soothing skills that we've helped them develop to be able to come back to themselves and not stay in these kind of polarized, either totally numbed out or in these big emotive spaces. All right. Okay, so I just want you to take a moment and kind of check in with yourself. How do you see yourself in that chart? Are you somebody who tends to, when things get really stressful and hard, do you go to your head? Are you more comfortable numbing out? Because if you are, then you're going to connect really well with your clients who do the same. So like for me, when I was very much in my head, and honestly, still, I connect better with clients who are thinkers, achievers, analyzers. But if I'm not careful, then we will have session after session after session after session after session of us talk, psychoanalyzing everything. I mean, we just stay in our heads the whole time and feel nothing because that's natural for both of us to do. It's part of how and so we have to really be aware, self-aware and careful. If you're a head person, if you tend to be numb, then you're going to connect really well with your clients in their head. And the sessions will feel amazing for both of you. They'll feel so productive, but you're not really helping them connect to their emotion and get the tap into the emotion and feel and express what they need to feel and express. And so after about 2 to 3 months, the sessions lose energy because you're not actually really progressing them forward through what they need and they to have that mind-body connection. And conversely, if you're somebody who's really into the somatics, if you do art therapy with people or yoga therapy with people and I just want to clarify, like, somatic work is palatable and powerful and necessary for trauma survivors. But you have to know how to do the somatic work and keep their mind aligned into the work. Otherwise, they are dissociating their mind and emoting and emoting and emoting and emoting, and they feel really good after the session, but they're not really growing and developing in their ability to manage their feelings because their mind is dissociating during that process. So if you are doing somatic work, it's really important that you help them keep their mind online and process while they're feeling. So these two together is what helps people actually heal and move forward in their trauma recovery. And it's really important that we know our own tendency. We know if we tend to be a mind or body person so that we can be really intentional with our work and take care of, I know for me, if I'm tired, if I'm a little bit sick, if I got in a big fight with my son, if there's something else going on in my life, then I'm gonna tend to revert back to kind of numbing out and being in my head. And so I have to be really intentional with my self-care practices so that I can bring all of me to my session and really help my clients stay aligned mind and body. And it's because I know that that's what's going to help them find the relief and the healing that they want and be able to create the life that they want for their future. All right, so this piece is just, like I said, this is the heart of my mission, is helping us as healers not only understand the best research-based practices for helping our clients achieve the goals that they want to achieve and create the life that they want to create, but really, really being grounded in our own self-awareness of where we're at in our own healing journey and where we have blind spots and things that we need to do. And one of those is, really being sure that your needs are not being met by your clients, that you have a fantastic life that you love outside of your work, that your life feels full and complete. And for me, I found myself a few years ago, I kind of had um we'll save my story for another day, but I had a moment in time it's been almost 10 years at this point, where had a full private practice, cash pay. I had a thriving practice, but I was personally getting more and more and more numb and bitter and resentful, and I was not taking care of myself outside. And I had let myself believe that because I was doing such a good job as a therapist, that was where my worth was coming from. And it really cost me a lot. It cost me a lot personally. It cost me a lot within my family. And I began to not be able to be consistent and do the work that I was capable of doing with my clients because I wasn't managing my own needs and ensuring that I was taking care of myself. So like I said before, we're not colluding with the split that exists. If you're like a head person, that you're not staying in your head with your clients, or if you're emotive, you're not just staying in emotion, you can use those strengths to help them, but really being intentional and helping them align and not playing the role of a rescuer. Okay, so just really understanding the difference in compassion and sympathy. Compassion is being able to be really present with somebody's experience I think I wrote it out here. Yeah, so like you're working with a client who's been through a traumatic event, and when you approach the conversation with compassion, you're fully present with their emotions, listening deeply without judgment. You're focusing on understanding their experience, offering a safe space where they can express themselves and feel heard, and your compassion reflects empathy. But if you approach the same situation with sympathy, you find yourself feeling sorry for your client, focusing more on the trauma they've experienced instead of offering healing, and forward-focused present sympathy might lead you to linger on the pain of the past and reinforce that victim mindset, like, well, they've been through so much and they just can't do this, and I need to take care of them. And that's more sympathy focused, and really then we step into this rescuer role that becomes problematic. And I'm going to show you that and explain it in just a second. Okay, so some big myths in trauma recovery is that we have to remember what happened to heal. We do not have to remember what happened to heal. We do not need to go through the story of what happened to heal. Healing happens in expressing and tapping into emotion and feeling emotion, processing emotion. Healing does not happen in telling a story, right? Of course, some people need that, and they need to be heard. So there is probably going to be an initial storytelling of what's happened to me, and we're going to sit with them and compassionately listening to them, and honor that they are trusting us with their story, right? But if we are like interested in the story or wanting to hear more about the story, or allowing them to just retell the story over and over, we're not supporting their healing and their growth. We're supporting them being stuck in the past, because the story is not where processing the story itself is not the healing. It's the emotion that comes with it. That's the healing. That the client has to forgive their abuser, that we need to share our own trauma stories in order for them to relate to us, that my client needs to show them anything so they can trust people. We're here to help them process emotion so that they can, and what I love about the coaching world is that you guys are so much more future focused than therapists are. Therapists typically tend to get too stuck in the past, and coaches are very much future focused, goal oriented. Where are you going? What are you doing? I think it's really important and powerful for coaches to understand some of the past stuff that needs to be unlocked, process some emotion. But I love that coaching world is so focused on the future. And so for you guys, this may not be such a surprise, these myths that where therapists kind of need to understand how much of the past doesn't need to be looked at and dealt with. We can move forward and create a future as long as we felt and processed the belief systems and emotions that we've experienced from trauma in the past. Okay, so there are 3 main stages of treatment or trauma recovery. The first stage is just creating that alliance, establishing safety and stability. And the middle stage is the really hard work of recovery. It's connecting to feelings, processing grief, learning how to be present in your mind and body at the same time. Your symptoms start to reduce. You start to change the kind of people that you're associating with and hanging out with. You start to believe, develop a self-belief system. And then the last stage is really where the coaching world shines, particularly really working on present and future, building healthy relationships, continuing to blend those fragments together, that the pieces that are kind of holding on to the different pain points. And so I'm gonna kind of skip through these because I've already talked through a lot of them. But like I said, initial stages is just establishing safety and stability. We're going to do the affect management, education about feelings, understanding how to process feelings in the middle stage, and then really helping clients come together, blend their different fragmented parts if they have them, and develop healthy relationships with themselves and with the people that are in their life. And in this stage, a lot of the grief is around letting go of relationships that they realize now are not serving them anymore, that they've really changed. And the relation, the problematic relationships that they've maintained and built that they need to let go of so that they can move forward. This stage, really, there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of grief around that, of course, right? So just as a reminder, like there's grief in every stage. The grief kind of looks a little bit different in each stage, but helping them understand and tolerate grief, process grief is going to be really present in every stage for especially a complex trauma survivor. Okay. So, yeah, I think we've talked through all of those for what we should focus on when we're working with trauma survivors. And this approach works for, like I said, I've worked with, I've specialized in trauma since 2009, worked with all kinds of different disorders. And this approach is highly effective for all of them, and also for, just general anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, and anybody you're working with who just is stuck, but you can't quite put your finger on why or where it's coming from. I'm hoping that hearing some of this tonight helps you kind of think through, like, okay, I think maybe we could tap into some of the locus of control shift and that where that belief system developed that they're a bad person, and process some emotion around that, and that will free them to be able to stop self-sabotaging and create a life of real meaning and purpose that they want. I have developed a freedom formula that tonight we don't have the time really for me to get into it, but I will show it to you. It's the 3 phases I've tapped into. So most people, well, every person I've worked with who is a trauma survivor has a general sense that they're crazy, that they're weird, that there's something wrong with them. And that's part of that locus of control shift, right? And then they have this emptiness inside that's attached to not feeling fully connected, and feeling a little bit dissociated between their self. And so helping them kind of deal with I have some specific steps around not feeling crazy, facing that emptiness, and then they can begin to reactivate their sense of self. How others see you and respond to you. When you show up in self-protective ways, then you're going to attract other people who are also self-protecting, and that's what creates those relationships that are not aligned. And then the patterns we are stuck in because we are trying to not feel our feelings, right? Also are problematic. So we have to kind of undo those patterns, step out of self-protection, and then get into reinventing your life. And the way I describe it is like the reckoning with the past side is more therapy based. And then when you get to the reinvent your life side, it's more coaching based. The coaching world is, like I said, very good at future focus, building a life you want. The therapy world doesn't have a lot of tools for that. And the coaching world struggles sometimes to help people really unpack the past and help them it's like the therapy world. So in my opinion, this is the best of both worlds, because we actually need both to really help people, especially people who've been through trauma, get through the things that they've been through and really come alive in who they are. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I know I was talking fast. I do have, there's lots more here if you want to explore, but I am happy to answer any questions that any of you might have or circle back to any of these concepts. I love talking about this stuff. So I don't know, you guys let me know how you want to move forward from here, how you want to do Q&A, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Janice, for this wonderful information and insights. We do actually have questions. Yes, we can start with Dahlia. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this informative webinar. I wanted to ask 2 questions. One of them is personality differences shape how they deal with the trauma? And second,
Yes. Go
the
ahead.
second question is, how does spirituality play a role in working in dealing with the trauma? Have you seen any real evidence in helping in that spirituality really helps trauma patients deal better?
Yes. So to answer your first question, it is a combination of nature and nurture. So you can have two children who have two very similar experiences. One might go to their head and become highly anxious and overthinking and overworking, and one might go into their body and like, I can't do anything and I don't know. Which one they choose has a lot to do with their neurological wiring. If somebody is wired a little more anxious, then that's what they're going to do when they face trauma and trouble, whereas somebody else might be wired a little more depressive. It's a combination of nature and nurture on how people develop what they develop as a response to the trauma that they've experienced. I have found that spirituality can be very powerful and very helpful. I don't I want to be careful in my response because spirituality has also been a big cause of a lot of people's trauma. So I don't want to say that they have to have that spirituality, but if they don't believe in God or want to connect even to the universe or higher power, then I will help them connect to nature. I will help them connect to the ocean or a tree or the earth. That I do find that having that grounded sense of connection to something greater than themselves is very powerful and helpful in their recovery. But how, us getting really creative and flexible and how each person develops what that is for them, that's powerful for them, is a big key.
Next, we have Yasmin. Yasmin, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, how are you? I hope you're doing good.
Hi.
So my question, it's not a question, it's actually to sharing. Today I opened my Instagram and I found a video saying that not only trauma but also emotions are inherited by our parents, especially from the dad. So these, especially the trauma, anxiety, stress, are inherited and on the genes, on the DNA. Not only, let's say, as we know, maybe cancer or diabetes or any other disease, physical diseases, but also these emotions and these stressful, let's say, occasions can be inherited from a family. Let's say one person, I don't want to say never had experience because we all experience anything in life, but let's say that they experience normal life, but they come up with the stress, anxiety, trauma, or whatever these emotions. So they found out that it's inherited, especially from the dad, from the DNA of the dad. So all dad are now are responsible for these emotions. But I don't know if that is 100% true or it's just something new they are sharing, studies, or what exactly.
Yes, I mean, I am not an expert in that field. I will tell you what I've read and researched, and then also another perspective I have. I've read, there's a book called It Didn't Start With You that talks about it's passed down through DNA. I do think that there's some truth there, but again, I'm not an expert, so I can't sit here and tell you definitively an answer on that. What I can say is what I've witnessed, I've experienced personally, plus I've just witnessed with the number of clients that I've served. If you have a mother and or a father who is still very active in their trauma symptoms, meaning they're highly dissociative, they are anxious, overworking, overthinking, numb, not able to feel, they are highly emotive, then it's like secondary trauma to you, and you pick up, like I was saying earlier, if your parents don't know how to help you have emotional integrity, you're going to think that the world works the way your parents are showing you that it works, right? So you're going to automatically become numb and not feel your feelings and become an overworker and overthinker because that's what's being modeled to you by the home that you're in. So it is passed down in that way as well. And as far as the DNA and the science of it, I do think there's truth there, but that's not my expertise, so I'm not going to sit here and teach that part of it.
Thank you, Janice. Shirley, would you like to go next?
Hi, my question was a bit linked to that about the trauma didn't start with you, and the science around that. So you kind of answered my question in my process. But like, so even within that, within the coaching kind of approach, it's kind of can help unpick that unpick that awareness and help that person move forward. And sometimes kind of I found with clients that understanding it's kind of like they can get to like kind of a more acceptance stage if they kind of unpick some of that understanding. So have you found that helps, Janice? You know, with
Yeah.
you know, even though we don't know the exact science of it, and you know, like, you know, but sometimes it's still the awareness that it's there and that they're being triggered by something. Have you found
Yeah, I
that?
think for many it is I mean, it depends on where they're at in their recovery process, and because some people will use it as an excuse to stay very much in a victim mindset. Well, I've just, I'm screwed. My mom was like this, and I was, God hates me, and so he put me in a family that's screwed up, and I will always be screwed because everybody in my family has always been screwed, and we're just messed up people and blah blah. People can so I've seen people take that route, but I've also been able to work with people who are like, okay, I see the big picture. This didn't start with me. It's not even really about me, although it greatly affects me. And they do find some like peace and comfort, and they're able to create some resolve in their life. And okay, so I'm taking it upon me to create new patterns and footprints for my family moving forward, for myself and for the future generations.
And
And it just depends on where they're at in their story.
yeah, and that kind of idea about breaking the cycle, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
breaking the historical patterns and cycles, and
Can be
yeah,
really
so
powerful. Yeah.
really interesting that. Thank you, and
Mhm.
thank you for
Uh-huh.
sharing.
Thank you, Janice, for this wonderful session. And if we do not have any questions, I've also put in some links for everyone to go through or connect with Janice. Janice has also shared a freebie with us for anybody who wants to take advantage or use her techniques and insights. I think we've got two more questions, Janice. Would you like to
Okay.
take ahead? Yeah, please go ahead,
Sure.
Alia.
Yeah.
Yes, I forgot. Want to ask you a question regarding children who had the journey with cancer. Do you apply the same techniques or the same form? Let's say the trauma way that you explained, or is it something different? It's going to be a different that depends on the kid's journey or the kid's age.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the family system that they're in and their resilient skills within the family and the emotional processing skills within the family. But I have found that children whose trauma is medically based can switch to the locus of control shift and feel like they caused this pain to happen to them because it's still overwhelming, confusing pain that they can't make sense of. Right. So that to make sense of it, they have to believe that they caused it or they deserve it in some way. So this is one of the reasons why I go into schools and help schools become trauma informed, because man, if we can get a hold of kids when those thought processes are developing, we're saving them a lifetime of and a lot of therapy bills as adults and trying to undo this work. So I have found that some of the belief systems are present. But not with all kids. Like I said, it depends on the family system and how healthy the family system is and how they're able to help their kids process. That is the biggest determiner of what kind of symptoms or thought processes that they develop.
Okay. And would it be I mean, would you work with like emotional intelligence? They would be aware of how they're feeling, how they're acting, or is it just thought-based or belief-based work more for these kids?
It's emotional processing work. So if a parent is able to be present with emotion without dissociating it, without pushing it away, without minimizing it, without exaggerating it, just being in raw, real emotion, then they can help their child be in raw, real emotion and comfort them and love them and feel and process that emotion until it is no longer present. Anybody can heal and recover from anything when they can just feel raw pain, but not very many people know how to do that.
Thank you very much, Janice. Jeba here. I don't have any questions, but those were very insightful points that you shared, and the effort that you took in putting together those notes and Coach Transformation Academy. Thank you so much for organizing this session. And it's really nice. I just hope that, whoever is going through trauma heal very, very quickly and in the right process, of course, and they get the right guidance and help. Thank you so much for organizing this session.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one last question. Janice, would you like to pick one last question from Sabuhi?
Sure, one more, no problem.
Hi, sorry, my internet's a bit busy. I was actually curious because I know that you have to be a trauma-informed therapist or a coach in order to deal with the complexities of this. If you come across a client, and generally I notice that because I'm originally from Pakistan, probably 90% of the clients have some history of very deep trauma. Usually, I always encourage them to explore therapy as well. Some of them are not open to therapy because they're like, we're done with that, we want to move forward. I sometimes find myself a little out of my depth, and like, I want to study more about this. What kind of like moving forward, maybe just like beginning of the first step could I take to get more information on this?
Yeah, okay, great question. Just from me, I have a YouTube channel full of free videos. You can subscribe to that, and while I upload them, you can listen to the podcast. This is my heart and soul. Like I said, if you're working with people, you're working with trauma. And so to help, I don't care what the letters are behind your name, you need to have the information to really understand and know how to support people. So those are the free resources I have. I also have a handful of paid master classes. I think there's a link to that. I have a membership. It's $47 US a month. You can, I teach live sessions and you get free access to those. And then I also have a certification that I can take. So that's just from me. But there's just tons of research out there. It's just continuing to inform yourself, right? And read and research and consume information so that you are keeping yourself as informed as possible. To try, and that's why you all are here. That's why you've taken time out of your day to be here. And I appreciate it.
Thank you, Janice, for this wonderful session. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It was so lovely to have all of you here. And we've also added the links to Janice's LinkedIn, YouTube, and there's a freebie that Janice has shared with us and a small PDF token for all of you for participating with us today. And we will see you next Tuesday with something new, something insightful. And as Janice said, please take care of yourself always and have a good evening and good day ahead. Thank you, Janice, once again.
Of course.
Thank you.